This is the journey that will take us through the harshest terrains and the most intense situations that can be imagined. Our guest? A U.S. Army Ranger who single-handedly faced and overcame the unimaginable in Afghanistan. His personal story is not just about survival, it's about extraordinary bravery and unwavering resilience. This is one tale you won't hear anywhere else. So are you ready to be gripped by a narrative that'll keep you on the edge of your seat? Stay tuned. Sergeant Thompson, a battle-hardened soldier with extensive experience from many tours of service, was stationed at a secluded outpost deep within the hazardous Afghan mountains. His unit faced an endless onslaught of threats from the wily Taliban and other tenacious rebel groups while charged with the critical job of maintaining security and undertaking daring reconnaissance missions. A mission unfolded amid the constant stress that would put Sergeant Thompson's bravery to the test. In the midst of ferocious combat, chaos broke out and he found himself suddenly isolated from his teammates, encircled by a relentless swarm of enemy forces. As bullets zipped dangerously close, the thunderous sound of gunfire resonated through the air, threatening to obliterate his fading hope. Sergeant Thompson's training and instincts burst into overdrive in the face of overwhelming odds. As he analyzed the quickly deteriorating scenario, adrenaline coursed through his veins. With steely resolve, he made a split-second decision that would permanently change the course of his mission. Despite the shower of bullets, he dashed into a nearby cave, seeking refuge in the thick of the turmoil. Sergeant Thompson's heart pounded in his chest as he stood in the oppressive blackness of the tunnel. The weight of the situation washed over him as silence encompassed him. His thoughts raced in this little rest, calculating the next move in this deadly game of survival. The cold, damp walls of the cave seemed to reverberate with the stories of others who had been before him, each telling of the indomitable human spirit. As time passed, the cave's boundaries turned from a temporary shelter into a terrifying maze. The eerie calm was broken by distant echoes of gunshots, acting as a disturbing reminder of the ongoing struggle outside. Hunger gnawed at his stomach and exhaustion threatened to break him down. Fear became his constant companion in the dismal night, weighing heavily on his psyche. Despite the mounting despondency, Sergeant Thompson's spirit remained unbroken. With each passing day, he drew strength from his loved ones' memories, the camaraderie he shared with his fellow troops, and the steadfast certainty that he would emerge from this crucible with a strong tale to tell. Sergeant Thompson promised to himself in the depths of that foreboding cave that he would not only survive, but would emerge as a light of hope and resilience. Despite the fact that the route ahead appeared to be covered in darkness, he held tenaciously to the flickering spark of his indomitable spirit. He had no idea that the nightmare that had awaited him in that remote cave was merely the beginning of an epic journey. A journey that would put his sanity and courage to the test, exposing the actual horrors of war to him. Throughout it all, Sergeant Alex Thompson would demonstrate that the human spirit can rise above the darkest abyss and illuminate the route to salvation, even in the face of unimaginable terror. Sergeant Thompson found himself alone and cut off from all kinds of communication, putting his survival skills and resilience to the ultimate test. Every day was a struggle against hunger, weariness, and the impending terror of being discovered. The passage of time became hazy as days became weeks, and weeks became apparently endless months. He clung to his training and instincts like a lifeline in this extreme isolation, pushing himself to the boundaries of his physical and mental endurance. Sergeant Thompson came into a ray of hope in the midst of the darkness on his long journey. Despite the ongoing conflict, he encountered Afghan people who stood up to the anarchy and bloodshed that surrounded them. These brave people, in their own quiet manner, showed him acts of kindness that rekindled a light within his tired soul. They shared scant rations and offered solace in their presence, telling him that the compassion and humanity had a place even in the middle of battle. Sergeant Thompson's bond with the Afghan people became stronger with each contact, and he became vividly aware of the tragic toll that war had exacted on them. As he bore witness to lives torn apart by violence and loss, the horrors he observed devastated his heart. The cries of pain and anguish echoed throughout the valleys, creating a haunting symphony within his own existence. These unseen stories of agony and strength were an unstoppable force, pulling him onward with steadfast determination. Sergeant Thompson vowed to himself that he would not only survive, but would also become a voice for those who had been silenced by the merciless gears of war. He saw that his experiences, imprinted on his spirit, had the potential to throw light on the untold stories of the Afghan people, stories that needed to be heard by the rest of the world. Sergeant Thompson captured the tragedies and successes he witnessed while his own survival adventures continued, capturing the spirit of a war-ravaged region via his words and memories. He engraved the Afghan people's tenacious spirit onto the pages of his journal, guaranteeing that their experiences would not be forgotten. But the weight of his mission grew heavier by the day. The continual worry of being discovered lingered over him like a shadow, reminding him of the difficult situation he was in. Fear wrapped itself around his heart, entwining with his purpose. Nonetheless, he found courage in the fortitude of those who had shown him kindness, in the stories imprinted in his mind, and in the steadfast support of his fellow soldiers who awaited his homecoming. Sergeant Thompson found peace in the steadfast notion that his survival served a purpose greater than his own life. He bore the burden of untold stories on his shoulders, unwavering in his determination to bring them to light. So he persisted, driven by an unbreakable fire within. The road ahead was perilous, filled with hazards that tested his willpower at every turn. But his steadfast spirit shone brightly, and his desire to relay the experiences of the Afghan people drove every step he took. Sergeant Thompson became an embodiment of resilience and hope as the months passed. In the face of hardship, his journey would become a testimony to the resilient human spirit and the power of narrative. He had no idea that the road ahead would be riddled with even more hardships and tribulations, the horrors of which would bring him to the brink of insanity. Sergeant Alex Thompson, on the other hand, remained unyielding in his resolve. He recognized that his survival was important not just for his own sake, but also for the voices that had been silenced, the lives that had been shattered, and the hope that still flared in the midst of the darkness. Sergeant Thompson's fortitude and unflinching spirit triumphed after what seemed like an eternity. He eventually managed to escape the confines of his hiding location through a mix of cleverness, luck, and pure resolve. He stepped back into the land of the living after emerging from the darkness, greeted by the warm embrace of freedom. The news of his return to friendly lines quickly circulated among his fellow soldiers, who had long assumed he was lost in the battle's mayhem. Their relief was mixed with awe when they heard about his dramatic survival. Sergeant Thompson had become a legend, a symbol of unwavering bravery and the personification of the warrior spirit. Sergeant Thompson returned to the base for debriefing sessions, telling his extraordinary adventure. His solitude had provided him with a unique perspective, and the information he gained during these long, perilous months proved crucial. He knew that the knowledge he possessed had the ability to transform the perception of the Afghan struggle, and he accepted the enormous responsibility that rested on his shoulders. Sergeant Thompson changed into an unyielding advocate for raising awareness about the human cost of war, driven by a deep desire to shed light on the forgotten stories of the Afghan people. His voice became a beacon of truth, cutting through the fog of misinformation and apathy. He wove a tapestry of raw truths, illuminating the complexities and nuances of life in Afghanistan via interviews, writings, and riveting public appearances. As a result, the story of this U.S. Army Ranger has been engraved into the annals of history, reminding humanity of the sacrifices made and the untold stories that must be shared. Sergeant Alex Thompson, the personification of unshakable heroism and the power of narrative, left an everlasting imprint on the world, propelling us toward a future in which compassion and empathy win over the ravages of war.